Hello and welcome to Cooler Than Homework, a Disney Channel original movie podcast. I'm Nicole Sweeney, and I would like to cast Kat Dennings as myself in a movie. I don't know. That was the first thing that came out of my mouth. I've been watching, WandaVision, still very much on the brain, so I don't know why.
I'm Matthew Gatos, and because similar recency bias, I've been watching a lot of New Girl. I'd cast Jake Johnson to play me in a movie.
My name is Marinez, and I would cast Rosario Dawson to play me in a movie.
Ooh. And I'm Ceri Riley, and I would cast Chloe Bennett to play me in a movie.
I love that for you.
I was so excited when she was like, she's half Chinese too. I love it. I'm going to store that fact in my brain.
But anyway, what we're actually talking about today is Zenon the Zequel. Why was that our topic? Why was that our intro?
I mean, I picked it because
because of the recasting. Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, okay.
I like that you didn't question it, though. You just went with it.
Because we all clearly want to be in this movie, Nicole. So if we're going to be starring on the Earth part of it, who's going to play us?
That's actually the real reason. I like that better.
Anyway, well, Mari, what happened in Zenon the Zequel?
Well, we are now in the year 2001, which is exciting in our run of DComs. That has nothing to do with the movie, but I just wanted to point out.
I mean, there's a lot of 2001 energy emanating from this movie, so I think that's fair.
Okay, thank you.
Lots of see-through tech.
I like how much grace we're just allowing each other. Yeah, this all makes sense to us. Okay, the movie starts with a scrolling text introduction, and a narrator catches us up on Zenon's life in the time since we've seen her. So basically, it's been pretty great, and her status as a hero means that she gets to roam around the space station pretty freely. We see this as Zenon and Nebula, a recast Nebula, are roaming around a restricted area of the space station, but Commander Plank just smiles at them and tells them to stay out of trouble. Zenon uses her access card to show Nebula a computer room where she says she has discovered a new game where you can use two moving bars to trap bouncing balls and stop them from escaping a designated area. They play this game, but unbeknownst to them, it isn't a computer game, and they are messing with the controls for the airlocks in Commander Plank's office. They keep opening and closing them, and all of Plank's belongings end up sucked into space. As I was preparing for this, I was like, you really don't need to go into details about this computer game, but I was like, no, the people need to know. Basically, though, the real material point is that Zenon gets in trouble for doing this, and she is punished to some shifts down in the alien patrol lab where they listen out for communications from aliens. There's only one other person down there, a boy named Orion, who is very passionate about aliens and kind of like space cadet-y, that kind of deal. To add further bad news, Greg from the first movie breaks up with Zenon, and to add insult to injury, the space station has new management, and it's the U.S. military. They send up General Hammond to take over after the hijinks of the first movie where the bad corporate guys were sabotaging the space station. They've been knocked out of orbit. The space station has been knocked out of orbit, and Hammond is coming up to decide which pieces of the space station are most vulnerable and are going to be jettisoned, and which families are reassigned to Earth, causing stress amongst the crew. When General Hammond arrives, he requests Zenon's help for a special project, babysitting his daughter, basically. And his daughter is none other than Margie, the mean girl from the first movie. Margie basically threatens Zenon, saying that unless Zenon is super nice to her, she's going to tell her dad to ground her family. And Margie really goes ham with this whole thing, having Zenon do her pedicures and do her homework and give up her food. And I'm not being sarcastic when I say all of these things are things I would hate a lot, and I was very mad while watching this. In the alien patrol lab, Zenon swears she hears a zum come through the transmissions, but when she alerts Plank and Orion, they don't believe her because, it's aliens and she has no proof. Later, Zenon hears it again, but it's more like a zum, but no one will still believe her. Margie continues being awful, but Nebula is kind of into it, especially because Zenon has to spend so much time in the alien lab. Other kids are also making fun of Zenon for saying that she's heard from aliens. Sad and alone, Zenon is in her room when she receives a mysterious download on her little, like, Etch-a-Sketch iPad or whatever, and it's a zum, zum, zum. So I'm curious when it was that you guys realized what was happening. Like, was it when Zenon realized that it was zoom, 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 or did you hear it before?
Definitely earlier, like maybe just like one or two times, like not the very first time, but maybe like the second or third time I was like, oh, I get it.
I was a dummy. Sylvia had the realization and then went, oh, and I was like, what am I missing? And she was like, it's the zoom, zoom. But I forgot that the song was Zoom Zoom, so
yeah, that's fair.
I mean, I just remembered this movie, so I can't answer that question. I realized it 20 years ago.
Sure, fair. Well, it's at this point that Zenon realizes that the zums are actually distorted zooms and the transmission is zoom, zoom, zoom. The song Not Even Aliens Can Get Out of Their Heads. Zenon is convinced. She makes this like jump to a conclusion that the aliens want to meet Protozoa. Nebula's family is grounded, but Zenon hatches up a plan to stow away to Earth and find Protozoa, who has been MIA since his rock concert in space, to deliver him to the aliens. Unfortunately for Zenon, Margie has also stowed away, wanting to be the hero this time. But also she left a message for her dad saying that Zenon kidnapped her. So
a monster.
Yes, totally awful. I'm not kidding. I was so mad this whole movie.
Yes, me too. Me too. I was furious with Margie.
So her dad is like understandably pissed that his daughter has been kidnapped from the space station. Zenon heads to Aunt Judy's with Margie, and using clues from Protozoa's lyrics, they find his secret bungalow hideaway where he's hiding out and feeling sorry for himself because he doesn't know how to top a concert in space. Zenon convinces him that aliens want to hear him now, which is how he tops a concert in space. But now they just have to find a way to get back to the space station. Zenon tells Margie to call her dad, but Margie accidentally taps into his Etch-a-Sketch instead, and so they all overhear a conversation where Hammond admits they're just going to jettison the whole space station because if not, it will crash to Earth. And I don't know why the U.S. military didn't just lead with that and say, hey guys,
yes,
we might crash to Earth, but okay.
Instead of just like telling people that they're fired, like why did they think that would be better or nicer?
I don't know. I don't understand.
To gradually firing people.
And with his big speech of like, I didn't want to be the bad guy.
Really?
Sir.
Aunt Judy convinces Plank to come pick them up, but he's caught by Commander Hammond, and so he's placed into military jail or whatever, and so they have to find a new plan for getting back up to the space station. So Zenon convinces her mom, who used to be a pilot, to come pick them up, but Mom is like super nervous and scared, and she's terrified of Earth and flying. But in order to do this for her daughter, she braves it and figures that she's going to give this a try. I, again, really nervous watching all of this. I don't think the best plan was get somebody behind a shuttle or a ship or whatnot who hasn't flown in a long time, and things don't go smoothly. Orion comes with her, but she has a hard time. Like, she's half the time she's like screaming and panicking, but they make it safely-ish to Earth to pick up Aunt Judy, Zenon, Nebula, Margie, and Protozoa and go off to meet the aliens. They fly to the location that the aliens sent Zenon, like, meet us here. But when they get there's no aliens around, so they're just kind of like hanging out. And they realize that actually they've run out of fuel, and Orion forgot to fill like the auxiliary tank. So they're just like out of fuel. And this is bad news because they're going to be pulled into the moon's gravitational field. And that starts happening. So they're being pulled down towards the moon. They're going to crash when suddenly the aliens show up, and they're in this like iridescent butterfly ship, and they save them from crashing, and then little sparks of rainbow light, who are the aliens, appear on the ship, and they use Zenon to basically explain what has happened here. They're lost in space and they need some navigational information from the humans from the space station, but they didn't want to take it without asking.
I love that. I love that little lesson tucked in there. Great. Good.
Yes. I mean, good lesson. Also, aliens, how long were you just lost because you didn't want to take something without asking? The aliens grab what they need, the information that they need, and in return, they tow the ship back to the space station where General Hammond, like, they all arrive safe, and General Hammond, like, sees the spaceship, but he's still like, I don't know, aliens might not be real. But then the aliens are extra super nice and helpful, and they grab all of the sections of the space station that were jettisoned and put them back into place, and then they knock the whole thing back into orbit, so the space station is saved again. Margie also stands up to her dad, and like that's her big redeeming moment. She also shared before that she was just a mean girl because she had to move around a lot when she was a kid because of the whole military thing. So yeah, whatever, Margie. And then at the end of the movie, Plank and Aunt Judy get married and Protozoa plays at the wedding, and he has his whole big moment about how, you know, this all taught him a lesson about how he's not the center of the universe because the aliens didn't really even care about him. And then they play their not as big of a hit as Zoom Zoom Zoom, but still a bop song, The Galaxy Is Ours. And then Zenon and Orion share a little moment. They share a little look. Passes between them, like, all right, you're a boy, I'm a girl. I like what
Can I make
see.
it any more obvious?
Yeah. And that's the end.
I feel like I need to explain to our audience the defensiveness with which you informed everybody that song was a bop. And that is that before we started recording, Matt was the first person to bring up the song, and his like opening was sophomore slump. And we got very defensive about the song being a bop.
You did. I did not realize there was gonna be such like a strong defense for the song. I thought we were all in agreement that like Supernova Girl was clearly a very superior song.
I mean, Supernova Girl is the better song, but that doesn't mean that this is a bad song, Matt.
No, still a bop.
Anyway, Matt, it's time for you to tell us where the cast of this movie is now. And spoiler, this section is not actually the same as the last time we did a Zenon movie.
Yeah, it seems like it would be. And my job's still pretty easy in this section, honestly, because we've talked about most of these people at least once before. I might go a little bit more brief on some of these because, again, I have mentioned these people at least once before, but we have Kirsten Storms, who plays Zenon in this movie, yet again, reprising her role, which you would think would be a default thing, but is not in this film. She, just like we talked about last time, is doing General Hospital forever, apparently, and has been doing it forever. That's kind of the only acting she does these days is General Hospital, but like we talked about last time, if you get a sweet gig like that, hold on to it. Next up, returning as Protozoa, we have Philip Reese, who, again, we talked about last time, still acting in things on the Sci-Fi Channel, like Night Flyers and a bunch of other things. He was in an episode of Doctor Who. And these two recently, Kirsten Storms and Philip Reese, did I'm going to steal the headline that I saw, they did a Zoom 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 reunion.
Oh my God.
Yeah. With the guy who plays Greg in the first movie, who's not in this movie. But the three of them did a little Zoom reunion thing on YouTube.
I'm sad that I missed it.
Yeah, I mean, it's skippable. I watched parts of it.
Oh, okay. All right. I am glad that it only gets to live in my head as the version in my head.
And with that headline. Zoom 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 might be the best part of that.
Yeah.
Just keep that, like, imagine whatever you imagined when I first said that, and just accept that that's what it is, and don't go watch it.
Okay, good.
Next up, and also returning to the Zenon-averse, we have Lauren Maltby playing Margie Hammond. We talked about her, obviously, in the first Zenon, because she tends to play the popular / mean girl in DComs, because she was also in Stepsister from Planet Weird. And as we talked about before, she was in I'll Be Home for Christmas, which is where I recognize her from the most. But outside of the Zenon movies and I'll Be Home for Christmas, she has not done much acting, especially since the Zenon movies. But now she is a psychologist.
I like that she's a psychologist and she can like be like, listen, I've played these mean girls on TV. I know like where you're coming from. You moved around a lot, so that might have affected you.
Yeah, you're being a bit of a Margie right now. So, and then we have returning to the DCOM world, but first time in a Zenon movie, we have Shadiah Simmons playing the new Nebula, replacing Raven Simone, who apparently, what I looked up, was too busy filming Dr. Dolittle 2 to be in Zenon, which I guess, like, she probably got paid a lot more to do Dr. Dolittle 2 than she would have for Zenon the Zequel, so I get it, but it was very weird for her to, like, Nebula, the character, to pop up, and I was like, that's supposed to be the same girl. Oh, okay. But yeah, as we've talked about before, she was in The Color of Friendship, the best DCOM, and she was also in Quince, a DCOM. And she is now a high school teacher and has her acting school outside of Toronto, Canada. Speaking of recasting roles and having new people, the parents are different in this movie, which... to be fair, it took me way too long into the movie to notice this, but they are different humans, much like a lot of the people in this movie and the first one that I kind of brushed over when talking about them. They're just kind of still acting. Both of them are still doing a lot of roles, especially the guy who played the dad, Robert Curtis Brown, most recently had a role on Handmaid's Tale, where I assume he played a shitty dude, because I think most of the dudes on Handmaid's Tale are pretty shitty. So I have not watched the show, but I feel like that's a pretty safe assumption. And then the mom, who is from New Zealand, is played by Susan Brady, currently the voice of Rita Repulsa in the most recent version of Power Rangers.
Love that.
Does she have her New Zealand accent in that?
I did not look that up, but I would assume no. I think it'd be weird if Rita Repulsa suddenly had a New Zealand accent, but I also know that Rita Repulsa has had like 10 different actresses voice that role at some point. So it might sound vastly different from when I was a kid at this point. But I did not do that much research.
No, that's okay. You have a vast wealth of Power Rangers knowledge that I just don't also. So you could give me more about the character.
Yeah, I could talk about Rita Repulsa all day. But it would be like the Rita Repulsa from like 25 years ago. It would not be Rita Repulsa from today, which I didn't even realize she was still hanging around in that show. Next up, we have John Getz, who plays Margie's dad / the general in this movie. He has gone on to play, as you might suspect, a lot of judges and congressmen and doctors and military guys, because if you look at him, you're like, yep.
It's got that face, yep.
That's what he should play. But he's been in, again, he's one of those guys who's just been in everything, like for one episode, but he's been in The West Wing. He was in the movie Zodiac. He was on Grey's Anatomy, American Horror Story. And most recently, he's had a recurring role on a show called Dirty John on USA that I have not heard of, but stars Christian Slater. And last but not least, we have Thomas Wright, who plays Orion, who we saw in Stepsister from Planet Weird, playing Cutter, the cool bro-y surfer heartthrob in that.
Mm-hmm. Did not recognize this man. I was so proud of myself for recognizing Nebula's very obvious, I'm sure, to everyone else recast, and then was like, good job. I got all the secrets of this movie, and I was so wrong.
I didn't not recognize him, but it didn't, like, now that you said it, I'm like, oh yeah, that's that guy. And I almost in my synopsis said something about him being like a surfer space bro. So like that connection is there. But when I saw him, it didn't ping my brain. So you're fine, Ceri. It's fine.
He is playing the exact same character, but in space now.
Yes.
But also, in both cases, the character is purely incidental to the plot.
Yeah, no, very much so. It's like... He exists because they needed more characters, I guess. They need a new boy.
Yeah, they need a new boy. I mean, well, and similarly in Stepsister from Planet Weird, like he's just there to be an object of conflict between the stepsisters.
And I guess to round this out, I did not talk about them last time, and I didn't do much research into them this time either, but the man and woman who play the guy who runs the space stay and Aunt Judy, They both are continuing to act in many things. The guy who plays Commander Plank, whose real name is Stuart Penkin, so those two things are competing in my brain for what his real name is. But yes, he went on to lots of things, but I know him best as the voice of Earl Sinclair on the show Dinosaurs. And so there's many times in Zenon where he's like yelling at Zenon, and all I can picture is a giant dinosaur man yelling at Zenon. I also once was in a local bar, Plonk, shout out, and was like 98% sure that Stuart Penkin was in this bar behind me. Talked to my friend about it the entire time, that I'm pretty sure that's him. I'm pretty sure this is him. And then my friend went up to him and asked, "Are you Stuart Penkin?" And he said, "I don't know who that is." So either Stuart Penkin was really trying to cover his tracks, or I just thought a man looked a lot like Stuart Penkin.
That's really funny. I'm glad your friend went up to him, because I would also not go up to this person, this random man, but it's like, what's the harm? There need to be brave people in this world to just go and ask strange men.
As far as where the cast is now, I can tell you that none of them are at Plonk in Missoula, Montana.
Great. Thank you for that in-depth reporting.
On the ground, firsthand, trying to get knowledge of where they are, but can't track them down yet.
All right, Zenon the Zequel, nostalgia check. I'm going to go first since I already answered this question during Maury's plot synopsis, that yes, I fucking know this movie really well.
Yeah, also, it's not as well, but I had seen it multiple times as a kid.
Yes, I also watched it enough that it wasn't one of the ones that that is stored in my brain, but while I was watching, like, my brain was like, oh, we have that file, and like, brought it forward, and I was like, oh yeah, I do remember this. So enough times that experience was happening.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, I've never seen it as a kid until yesterday.
It would have been great if you had seen the Zequel, but not the first one.
Yeah.
I'm still every week I'm holding out hope that it will be one that, for some reason,
Ceri was at a friend's house.
You remembered that you saw it.
Yeah,
yes.
yeah.
Because that would be it. It's like if I was at a friend's house, because I would never click Disney Channel, and I don't know if we even had it, but like I would never consciously choose to watch something on it, and I don't think my brother would either. So it would be like, it would have to be a friend's, because we wouldn't click it at a motel either.
All right. Well, did you like this movie? Overall, Zenon is fairly highly rated on our sheets. It's a top 10 movie. The first one was a top 10 movie for all of us. It looks like Zenon the Zequel, maybe also. I don't know. What do you guys think? How do you guys feel about this movie?
Yep, top 10 for me. Top 10 movie. I did enjoy it. I think it had a lot of the charm of the original. There were like a couple of additional things that you're just going to get when like Tina's having wacky hijinks and saving her world or whatnot that are like, okay, that didn't make sense, like with the military and whatnot. But it's still really charming, and there's, even in the dated aspects of it, there's like, entertainment there. And a lot of the same things that we said about the first movie, about how like they peppered in this like reimagining of language and the terms that they use that were similar enough that you're like, I know what you're saying, but like weird enough that it's the future. I'm still down for all of those things. I was like, yeah, I did want a round two. You're right, Disney. This is what I needed.
I especially loved when you got to the contact with the aliens in the plot synopsis, because you could hear the joy. There was like the joy in your voice at the concept of these like rainbow light aliens, because also big same. That's how I felt about it too. Even now, like, it's nonsense. It's pure fucking nonsense. And then the aliens just like magically retrieve, lost parts of the ship. Delightful. I love it. It was precise. It was incredibly charming, and all of those like wish fulfillment-y aspects of it also just like they hit correctly for me.
I promise you that the delight was like genuine, because throughout I was like, okay, she makes contact with aliens, because I was like remembering these bits and pieces, and I was like, I cannot for the life of me remember like if the aliens are real or what the aliens look like. So my head immediately, I'm going to your like standard Martian green man, big eyes kind of thing. So when they show up on the butterfly ship with the Lisa Frank colors and their sparkly lights, I was like, a delight. delight.
I love that DCOMs now were, I think, 2 for 2. We've only got 2 DCOMs with, no, I guess the one that I hate with the bug people.
Can of worms.
Can of worms. I was about to say incorporeal. We do have two DCOMs now though, where Disney Channel has decided that the aliens are not solid, and I love that.
Incorporeal DCOMs that have those aliens. Top 10 movies. Yeah. The one with the actual aliens.
Yeah, corporeal aliens, bad. Yeah, that's our feedback for the Disney Channel.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't really have much to say besides agreeing. I feel like what annoys me about DCOMs is when they like try to have these elaborate fake science explanations, like testing the snow. And with no conclusion. But if you just throw some sparkly aliens my way, I will eat it up. I'm like, yes, of course they're going to be telepathically communicating. Of course they're polite aliens. Of course they're just like the most wholesome gas cloud things. Not even gas cloud. They're sparkles. They're the most wholesome glitter in the whole universe.
Polite glitter.
And I love them. So I thought that was fun. I also just have a good time with the fact that the premise of these movies is that Zenon has these such wild ideas and plans, and she's always right. Mm-hmm. And that's so funny to me. Like, she can the whole Earth is trying to track down Protozoa who has gone missing. And in 5 minutes, she pieces together and then Googles Linda Nova and finds him. It's just like, this would only happen to Zenon. And like after this other guy has been trying to monitor for aliens for years and years, and like presumably other scientists have been doing it. She's just there and she hears the zooms, and of course it's Zenon.
But also she's sweet about it, you know? She's not like, oh, I'm the one who found the aliens. Like, there's none of that energy too. So it's not that kind of thing could also be very frustrating too. But like, I don't know, like there is, this character has an energy to her that is just so endearing. I think like that is ultimately a big part of why I love the Zenon movies so much, is that I just love Zenon. Yeah. I love her. She's my child.
I think part of it is like, even to what you're saying, like, okay, they tell us, you know, Zenon's this big hero, so she gets to do what she wants on the space station, and that could play, like you're saying, really arrogant and like rubbing the viewer the wrong way. But she's like, hey Nebula, come look at this little stick and ball game I found. And it's so you're just like, oh, cute. Like, she's just being her normal teen character self, and she's trying to be nice to everybody, and she's just wanting to have disadventures and do the right thing and for people to believe her. So even though everything comes up roses for Zenon all of the time, like, you still root for her because she does have that like earnestness as a character.
Earnest child constantly stumbling into messes. Love it. Love that. Love that.
Yeah, I similarly, this is definitely top 10 for me. It stays like below the top 5 a little bit because there's like, I was trying to compare it to the first Zenon, obviously. That's what you do with sequels a lot of times. And in comparing it, there was just more that I was nitpicking in this one than I was like in the first one. So, and I think to me, this reads as a movie that just had like a smaller budget and a worse creative team behind it as far as like visually. Like, I went back and watched some clips from the first Zenon movie, and Zenon 1 just like looks better as a movie, which you would think that like through time they might get better with this stuff, but I don't know if it was like the cinematographer they hired or whatever. But like Zenon the Zequel just like looks very flat and like on a set, whereas like Zenon 1 looks pretty good. And then science-y nitpick for me, which is usually, I know, Ceri's field, but early on after Greg breaks up with Zenon, the Nebula says something along the lines of like, well, how can you expect to keep a relationship going from 180,000 miles away? And I'm like, that seems far, because their view of Earth it's quite large, like as if they were the space station, which is only a couple hundred miles away. So I was like trying to look up like, okay, how far away actually is 180,000 miles? And it turns out that like, if we all know that like blue marble picture that was taken on like Apollo 17 of like the entire Earth in one picture for the first time, whatever, that's only 18,000 miles away. And they're supposed to be 10 times as far away from Earth as that picture. So Earth should be very small outside of their window because they'd be much closer to the moon than they are to Earth. And so obviously didn't change my enjoyment of the movie, but it was just that like sitting in the back of my head every time I saw the Earth outside of the window, or when they suddenly were like, oh, we're going to just like zip over to the moon real quick and we'll be right back with our shuttle. There's a lot of like just ignoring science things that bugged me.
I love that you are the science picking person in this episode because I'm Team Haunt Earth. Do not care about space. As soon as you leave the Earth, the
That's
science can go out the window, but you care about distances because you'll have to be floating around in that vast void and know how far you're floating.
Yep, you're not wrong. That's exactly what it is.
It's funny because my feeling is almost the the appeal of haunting space is that space just feels like magic to me anyway. So I'm also just like, I don't know. Yeah, I want to go meet the rainbow aliens. Sure.
Yeah. Like nobody has changed my mind on haunting Earth versus haunting space, but in the pro column of haunting space, the rainbow aliens are out there. And I feel like that's a fun one.
It feels like really tied into my brand that I have to go find the polite glitter, right? Like that's what I have to do. That's what I have to do with my afterlife.
I also, as far as like a story beat goes, I really thought the airlock thing was going to be really important later on.
No.
Like,
no, not
like
at
it
all.
felt like they were setting that up as like, oh, Zenon knows how to control the airlock. Maybe she'll have to like break into the general's office later by going outside the ship or something. It just felt like very much like a setup for something, and then it wasn't. And then my other nitpick thing is that like Protozoa's been missing for a year, and no one seems that concerned by like, and it seems like they're just reporting on it now of like, oh, by the way, just thought we should tell you, we haven't seen Protozoa in a year. But apparently he's been writing songs about his house this entire time. So don't worry, we'll track him down.
Yeah, I was a little bit hoping for more of a payoff with the glitter, with the polite glitter, where they assembled such like a ragtag crew of people in this garbage spaceship that they would play some more of a role in communicating with these aliens or something like that. Like I was hoping that we could combine the superpower of like Aunt Judy's panic / practicality and like friendship, the power of friendship in there. I don't know, like something could have happened there in which everyone used their skills together to communicate with the aliens, but they were just all there. They just happened to be there because that's who ended up on the ship at the end of the movie.
And the ship had a very convenient number of seats.
Yeah.
That's fair. That is all fair. I will say, though, that I enjoy the fact that this whole thing is that Zenon jumped to this conclusion that to save her spaceship, she's got to deliver the rock star Protozoa to the aliens who clearly want to hear him play because they sent her zoom, zoom, zoom. And she gets there and they're like, no, man, we're lost. And I love it because it feels like such a teenager thing to be like, oh, obviously they want to hear my favorite band. And they just really wanted directions.
They just really wanted directions. And also they were like, listen, if we play this teenage girl's favorite song, she'll help us. She'll help get us directions.
I also love that at the end when Protozoa is going to perform and he has to acknowledge of like, I thought I was super important to these aliens and turns out, nope, no one really cared. I went missing for a year. No one cared. These aliens didn't care about me. And now I'm playing a wedding.
We talked about Margie. Well, I brought her up in my plot synopsis and just her whole role in this. I said I was angry, and that is true. But it wasn't angry like I was mad at the ultimate Christmas present kids where I couldn't enjoy myself because they were such like brats that I was like, this is not fun. And Margie is a brat. But I think that it's like balanced by the other stuff in the movie where even where I was like, Margie, you're the worst, I was still having fun with the movie. But man, and then she almost gets off a little too easy, I think, at the end. Like, fine, Zenon's great. She's going to hug her and like all good feelings there. But she literally told her father, a commander in the U.S. military, that Zenon kidnapped her. And that could have ended really badly for Zenon is all I'm saying.
It also, that last scene where she's sort of standing up to her dad, it fit more in a movie where she was like scared of her dad, or like he was grounding her often, or he was like a very strict military guy. And so she never had stood up to her dad before. And this was like that big moment of like, I will finally stand up to my dad because I'm defending my friend. But like the version we see is that throughout the entire movie, he is wrapped around her finger and does anything she says.
Yeah. I mean, yes, I also was very frustrated with Margie. I think, to your point, Mari, I think the thing is that she is like well balanced by Zenon. Like it's the like Zenon's energy is necessary to sort of counterbalance that. Whereas like in The Ultimate Christmas Present, right, we have these bratty kids and like their foil is this girl who's getting in trouble because of them. And like the girl who's getting in trouble because of them is like a secondary character and feels like she is being pulled along by the bratty kids. Whereas Zenon, like, Zenon has more of her own agency. So, and like is the main character, whereas Margie is like, and Margie is sort of the secondary character. So like that dynamic, I think, makes it work in a way that The Ultimate Christmas Present did not. So this episode's group discussion topic is sequels. This is not going to be the last time that sequels will come up on this podcast, but it is the first time. So we all enjoyed this sequel. So I guess the question then is, what makes a good sequel? Like, what makes a sequel work? What makes a sequel to not work? And what are some of your favorites?
When I came up with this idea for a discussion topic, it was also that thing of then suddenly overwhelmed with, oh, there's a lot of sequels out there that I actually do like. So what, like, I narrowed down to 3 that I think sort of do the sequel thing the best. And I think what makes a good one is usually when it sort of captures the spirit of the earlier one, but isn't just retreading the same water and is being sort of an evolution of the previous one. So the 3 I thought of immediately were Paddington 2, which is maybe one of the best movies, period, of the past like 10 years. Then also Thor Ragnarok, which is one of those things that just revitalized a series that was going downhill a little bit. And then Toy Story 3, which I think is another one of those sort of like perfect sequels of playing on your nostalgia for the original, but also telling a like real heartfelt story at the same time and just reminding you of why you like the earlier thing as well along the way, which I think is important for a sequel to do.
Yeah, I think I agree with that. Coming from a teenage years spent vaguely in the realm of fan fiction, I feel like a good sequel is one that takes characters in a world that you enjoy and plays with them in a fun way. So kind of like you were saying, not just rehashing the story that they already did, but also not just like moving them through the motions because you can. I feel like my least favorite sequels are like there was no development here. Mm-hmm. The first one made money, and so we just like made more episodes or made another movie. And they're so forgettable to me that I can't list any examples of things that I don't like because I don't know.
Like part of the point is that they have like failed, and so like they don't leave a real impression. Yes.
Yeah, yes. Where it's like they blend into the same thing. I don't know what happened to the characters when, but a good sequel brings fresh energy or a new perspective to those characters, and I think that's why I loved Thor Ragnarok so much. Where even as a sequel, you could watch it as a standalone movie and like there are nods to those characters that you can get if you've watched the originals, but it's just taking these characters and this like cinematic universe that people have grown to love and doing something fun and wild and giving them more personality. And the other one that was on the top of my list was Aliens, which I've watched at various points in my life. I think I watched it with my family first because my dad likes like sci-fi stuff. And then I watched it to write a crash course script on it for film criticism. And every time I watch that movie, it's like I can just jump into that one. I don't need to watch Alien, the first one. I don't need to watch Alien, the first one, even though that like gives you context for the world. And it's just a good story. It builds on the characters and like you care about them more throughout it. and it has memorable plot points on its own, and it like expands the universe and expands the lore in what I think is an interesting way, not in a overwhelming or just like I don't really care anymore. I would like to leave some mystery in this universe. I think that what it does well also being a sequel is it doesn't explore every mystery in the universe. I think I get tired of sequels when it's like the sixth movie in a universe, and I'm not a completionist in that way. Like, I don't need to know where the origin of every single person or species came from. And so you can also just have a sequel and like leave questions still unanswered. And I like that.
So this is not something that I had thought about until hearing you say it. Thor Ragnarok was like near the top of my list because I'm currently making my way through the MCU movies again. I'm not too Ragnarok, but that's like after watching the earlier Thor movies, I'm like, yeah, can't wait for Ragnarok because that's when it gets better. But hearing you talk about the way in which a good sequel is additive and explores like new things, this is going to sound like such a kiss-assy answer because it's our boss. But the thing that I really like about A Beautifully Foolish Endeavor, the sequel to An Absolutely Remarkable Thing, is that so like An Absolutely Remarkable Thing is April's story through and through. It is very much about like the messiness and selfishness of its protagonist is at the forefront because it is her telling her own story, and the way in which the sequel takes this world that was already very large, right? Like it's a first encounter story, and then says, okay, actually, we're now going to give all of the characters the opportunity to speak, and the way that it like directly answers some things that would like maybe make the first book not as enjoyable for some people. All of that I really, really enjoyed about that as a follow-up.
I had that on my list as well, and I was like, I can do this because he's not my boss. Not anymore. So I had that on my list as well, especially because I was thinking about the sequels that come off of a very good and strong thing versus the sequels that come off of a weaker sort of thing. Mm-hmm. And so a lot of my examples, like I was thinking about any Buffy season but season 1 and the way that got progressively better. And superhero movies too are good examples in general, the way that they progressively learn how to do the thing that they're doing, learn the character, and builds on the lore, and why like a lot of the sequels to the MCU movies are better and stronger to me than their predecessors. Right. And then I thought about like I love these examples where a sequel takes something, whether it's a weak point or just like an open-ended question or something in the first, and then answers it. And I think A Beautifully Foolish Endeavor does that very, very well. And this is a weird example because there is currently a very bad movie version of it in the theater right now. But the Chaos Walking trilogy is one of my favorite trilogies, I would say. And it's very hard to like sell it to people because I think that the first one gets a couple of things pretty wrong in terms of like the big bad and the villain is very almost mustache twirling and kind of empty and hollow. But you move on to the sequel, the second book, and it is such a stronger book, and it answers directly some of those questions you had in the first book with one of the best villains that I've ever read in my life. And so I'm always like, but read the sequel. But I understand why people don't want to after reading the first one. But I just love cases like that where you're left with some question or something that didn't really go the full way in the first entry of something, and then the second one you're like, aha, here it is, this is what I've wanted. It's so satisfying.
It's not even like addressing like an inherent weakness, like it's literally just taking a story and then like here's a completely different way of looking at the same story, which I also think is a really interesting way to use a sequel.
I think the Zequel that like does a lot of those things too that we're talking about. Like, obviously, aliens were not a part of the first story, but they don't feel completely out of place because it's a movie taking place in the future on a space station. So, like, it's already got that sci-fi element to it that adding in aliens doesn't feel like, whoa, you've broken the world that you built
In a completely different vein, at some point during quarantine, I decided to watch both of the Mamma Mia movies. And I have to say, so I had seen the first one before, and I was like, okay, cool, great. Like, I'm just here to have a fun time and like let that wash over me. And I did not anticipate what I was signing up for with the second one, which is to say that I sobbed for the better part of 2 hours. Like, didn't think that that's where we were going. Like, just had no way of expecting that. But also, I was like, it made sense to me as another half to the story that the first one tells. Very, very different than all the other things that we're talking about. But basically the second movie is a giant grief story. Her mom is dead. The Meryl Streep character is dead, and she's just crying about her dead mom a lot. So so that's the second movie. I missed that memo. So that's my warning for anybody else thinking, oh, I want to keep having fun. It's fun. It's still a fun movie, but also you cry.
Yeah, I think that's a good example of one that sort of like a sequel that can surprise you usually means it's a good one. Doesn't always. Like sometimes the surprises can be bad. But I think that's a good example of a movie where you do kind of go in expecting just another one, and you get something very different in a way that I'm sure some people didn't care for, but I thought was a good, smart way to sequelize that film.
And now we are going to talk about the lessons that we learned from Zenon the Zequel. The lesson that I learned is that if people were intended to be outdoors, then they wouldn't have invented houses.
The lesson I learned is that if your spaceship is beautiful enough, you can't be evil.
That was my second. I had 2 things written down. That was my other one.
I learned that if you're going to go hide in a remote location, make it Googleable still, so just in case someone can still find you.
To be safe. But also if you're gonna like protect the perimeter, some like a tickle tripwire. Yeah. Delightful.
I forgot about that. It was
incredible
so
security measure.
I learned that if you are breaking into a computer, don't assume anything is a video game.
And now, to close out this episode of Cooler Than Homework, it is time for Ceri to guess the plot of the next movie. She did great work with Zenon the Zequel. Truly very proud of you. But now it is time for you to guess the plot for Motocrossed.
So the pieces of information I'm working from are, 1, it's called Motocrossed. And 2, there was a discussion pre-recording and also with my partner while we were watching this movie that this next movie is one of the best. It's good. And that's psyching me out, I think, because now I'm trying to like second guess myself and be like, well, what would she like? what kind of movie? But so that being said, I can't live up to Zenon the Zequel because I truly have no idea. Motocross is bikes. I know that much. But it's like stunting. So somehow this is another animal starring movie where Motocrossed is about like a girl and her dog, and her dad was really into motocross, and so she is like excited about it, and I don't know, like she can't do it for some reason. I'm trying to puzzle through this. Maybe it's like too dangerous, and so she works with her dad to train her dog to do motocross. You know, kind of like those surfing dogs or like the skateboarding dogs. They like start a pet version of motocross where dogs are doing stunts on little bikes, and it's just like really cute and wholesome. And what's the tagline?
Not gonna help.
Oh no.
The tagline for Motocrossed is, when Andy stepped in, an extreme sport, ... became an extreme adventure.
Ah, rats. Okay, so Andy is very clearly our protagonist with the dog, who has been inspired by her dad to do the extreme sport, and then is now training her dog to go on these extreme adventures. And it's kind of, we watched a dog documentary about dogs that are trained to like emergency rescue. And it's like quite a process. They're hand selected as puppies, and they're like shown playing, and they do all these trials where they run in tubes and like detect people. And so I imagine there's just a lot of montages of like this dog trying to overcome its fear of stunts, and there are other trainers. Now dog motocross exists. I've gone too off the rails.
You're really committing to this.
I love that, like, too, your explanation was like, well, they can surf and they can skateboard, so clearly the next step
they can ride a motorcycle.
Yeah, the more that I talk myself into this hole, the more it's just looking like a horse sense, which doesn't seem like one of the things that you all would like.
I also am trying to picture how the dog would sit on the dirt bike.
Yeah, this is like how would a dog wear pants?
Yeah. Like, is the dog sitting on the seat with front paws on the handlebars, or does the dog have its back two legs down on the sides of the dirt bike like a human would?
Yeah, we're gonna have to draw a diagram and do a Twitter poll.
Yeah. How does a dog ride a dirt bike?
Anyway, Ceri, how does this movie end?
Oh, I give up.
We're not saying your guess isn't accurate, Ceri. We're just saying...
Yeah.
We have questions.
I'm going to say there's a dad who does motocross, a girl who wants to get into it, and there's going to be a dog, and I'll stand up by that. But I don't know what the plot is. I stand by my guess, but I know it's wrong. And then the conclusion is that they became closer as a family. The end.
I appreciate your commitment.
Yeah, I also appreciate your commitment. And that was that's a solid, conclusion. That's like a safe, having watched a lot of DComs, And then at the end, the family becomes closer. Great. Yeah. Amazing. Find out next time on Cooler Than Homework what the actual plot of Motocrossed is. Sorry, I mean, if that's the plot. We would love to hear all of your thoughts on Zenon the Zequel, and also on how dogs would ride dirt bikes. So there will be a post dedicated to this episode up at SnarkSquad.com/DCom or BonesForBowser.com. Or you can find us on Twitter at DComSquad. We'll also put that poll up there. I am at Sweeney Says.
I am at Matthew Gatos.
You can find me at My Name is Marines.
And I'm at C.E. Riley.
This podcast is a Snark Squad production, edited by me, transcribed by Mari, and our theme music is by Stephen Chin.